Hello, and welcome to another battle report from the Brotherhood of Broken Banners. I'm your host today, Adam, and on this episode, we'll be going over a match against friend of the channel, Ryan. This match will be my Martells versus Ryan's Baratheons, the eldest sand snake Obara versus the Lord of Greenstone, Eldon Estermont. This battle was recorded at our friendly local game store, Rogue State Games, up in Mahwah, New Jersey. For the Martells, Obara leads a ragtag team of Lysine sellswords into battle. These discount Greyjoys utilize the pillage mechanic to become a menace once they get rolling. Combined with Obara's sundering and reckless heroism, they can flank an enemy, pick off a weakened unit, and quickly get ready to do it all again. Alongside Obara is a mainstay of most armies hailing from Dorne, the Sand Skirmishers. An attached High Hermitage Sentinel gives more maneuverability, which gives them an effective 15-inch threat range between their natural speed, enhanced mobility, and quick fire. 2 units of riders, both pledged to House Dane, round out the combat units in this army, the Starfall Knights and Starfall Outriders. The Outriders are here to be a cheaper, extremely mobile unit who can apply pressure wherever they are needed on board. The Starfall Knights, however, are one of the nastiest parts of this army, capable of some seriously silly damage potential with Obara's Reckless Strikes Tactics card. Rounding off the army is the trusty pair of Arianne and Ilaria, who continue to put the fear of Dorne into people's hearts, and Varys, who provides a bit of extra utility. Across the table, Eldon is attached to a unit of Rose Knights, whose decent stats, ignoring the universal weakness Baratheons have against anyone who could jog, make the unit a prime target for Eldon's battle endurance. To pair with the Rose Knights, Stag Knights also join the fray, accompanied by Loras Tyrell as Lord Commander of the Rainbow Guard. This gives him the Deadly Bloom ability, which although there is no direct combo with Stag Knights, has some pockets of synergy with other parts of the list. Next up are the Riders of Highgarden, who are a cheaper, relatively vanilla Lance Cavalry unit designed to apply pressure where needed and take out or maim priority targets. Finally, we get to one of the units I've most enjoyed seeing on the battlefield, the Highgarden Pikemen. At 5 points, these guys deliver a surprising amount of survivability with their 4-6 stats, and with coordinated assaults have a damage output that should be respected. The big beauty Brienne joins them in her Rainbow Guard appearance, giving them the recently changed battle scars. This ability is surprisingly effective at giving units a lot of punch and making them a threat, especially as the battle wears on. Of course, we also need to mention the NCU suite that Ryan chose to field, starting with the Queen of Thorns, Olenna, who is capable of throwing an elderly woman-sized wrench into any opponent's plans, that is, if the plans involve using a cool NCU. Next up is Marjorie, who pairs well with the multiple instances of Deadly Bloom that are being fielded. Finally, we have Courtney Penrose, who combines wonderfully with Olenna to really mess up an opponent's plans to use their NCUs. Overall, this looks like an interesting matchup, with a much more aggressively slanted Martell army looking to get under the Baratheons before they can get the ball rolling on their multiple stacking abilities. The Baratheons came to really mess up opposing NCUs, which the Martells will probably find particularly annoying, as a lot of their strength and survivability comes from optimally using said NCUs. With the armies out of the way, let's get to the action. Today's game mode will be the Winds of Winter. The game mode has both players create a deck of 2 fixed and 4 chosen hidden missions, and starting round 2, both players get to select a hidden mission from their deck and see how scoring will work for the round. This game mode does not have players natively score for holding objectives, so it can be quite a bit different than other 5 objective game modes. We roll off the dice to see who deploys first. I get the high roll, so I choose Ryan's deployment zone, and I make him put down the first unit. Ryan puts his Stag Knights in the middle, and I put my Sand Skirmishers over the bog, because they don't care about the roughed keyword. Ryan chooses to put Eldon as far away from my Skirmishers as possible. I put the Starfall Outriders directly opposite Eldon, and Ryan eagerly puts the Pikemen with Brienne between the Stag and the Rose Knights. Next, I put the Outriders near the middle of the table so as not to leave a big gap in my army, and Ryan puts his riders on the far flank opposing my Skirmishers, knowing they can stay safe until it's time to charge. Finally, Obara squeezes between the Outriders and the Skirmishers, and it's time to start the game. Round 1, and I use Sand Diplomacy. Ryan chooses horses, and I choose bags. I take letters with Varys, draw 2, and weaken the Stag Knights. Just kidding, the Riders, to blunt their charge. Ryan starts the turn by playing a Battle Endurance on Rose Knights, just like we drew it up. Early Taxes card attachments are always great. Olenna activates and targets Aryan to lose all abilities, and while she's at it, takes the crown and tries to zap Obara's unit, failing. Aryan then activates and claims the swords, but doesn't influence anybody as Olenna got to her first. Skips with Courtney, Ilaria, and finally Marjorie, and we can actually begin the round. First up is Obara. She's the most telegraphed unit, so I bring her far enough to threaten the mid, while not being totally overextended for the riders to charge her. In response, Eldon marches his mighty 8 to try and be relevant in the fight. Starfall Knights get put behind the low wall to protect against early aggression, and the Stag Knights line up in the center. The Sand Skirmishers, with the High Hermitage Sentinel, pivot, march, and pivot in a way that any front charge against them would put the enemy through the bog. Brienne and Pikes slide up to leave no gaps in the offensive line being presented. I decide to redeploy my Outriders towards the other side of the battlefield and have them come up right in the middle, seeing as their current location was about to be overrun by angry infantrymen. To wrap things up, the Riders of Highgarden take a threatening position, where in order to shoot them, my Sand Skirmishers would have to overexpose themselves. It's the end of round 1, and it looks like Ryan is being very aggressive, using almost all of his units' movement speed, while I'm being a bit cagey. I need to figure out where to best break his offensive front, and fast. Start of round 2, and we reveal the mission cards 2 and 8. Claiming the swords or horses on the tactics board gives the opponent a victory point, as well as being able to remove conditional tokens at the end of the round to score. Ryan kicks things off by playing Oath of Duty onto his Stag Knights. Then, Olenna takes the letters, shutting up my Aryan again. The letters draws him up to 5, and he weakens my Sand Skirmishers. With the cards flowing, another Oath of Duty is placed on his Stag Knights at the start of my turn as well. They're getting pretty Voltroned up at this point with all the buffs. I activate Varys, taking the crowns, to try and get Ryan to make the first move. His riders pass the panic with boxcars. Either way, Ryan then uses Courtney to target the riders with the crowns to remove the weakened token. I pass with Aryan, and Ryan decides it can't be put off any longer and activates his Riders of Highgarden. I, in response, activate a trap card I had been saving, and Rising Temperatures' Cavalry, to not only prevent offensive cards on this charge, but for now at least, also stop his defensive cards for my clapback. Ryan decides that victory is for the bold and lines up a charge on my Sand Skirmishers. Never tell him the odds. This combination of Rising Temps and Bogs basically equates to a disorderly charge, but he's auto-in. Of course, I need to add some insult to injury and use Dune Tactics as well. Because I have crowns, Dune Tactics even has the effect to give him vulnerable and panicked after the attack. Ryan still manages 3 hits, and I block none of them, of course, but at least I passed the panic check. I decide that blocking swords and moving the weakened token off my skirmishers is worth giving up a VP. Using the Sand Skirmishers' scout openings, I then use Ilaria to swing their not too shabby melee into the riders. I manage to score 3 hits and 2 wounds. After the armor saves, I use a panic token to squeeze out a few more wounds and end up taking over a rank off of them. Off of my attack, Ryan uses Baratheon Justice to place out a panicked and a weakened token on my skirmishers, and then he skips his turn with Marjorie. I do the skirmisher thing and retreat plus quickfire to land a couple hits. Even through the weakened token, I'm still able to land 4 hits on the riders and take yet another horse off the tray. Ryan maneuvers his Stag Knights forward, both to get closer to the action and to try and present a tempting target to lure me away from his weakened riders. However, I don't take the bait and instead reckless heroism directly into the riders. Obara's unit takes the full 3 wounds off of the reckless heroism. Unfortunately, I've been pouring a lot of resources into taking these riders down so far, including giving up a victory point. Even over the bog, Obara easily takes down the riders, which is a mixed bag. On one hand, that's one less unit Ryan has to work with. On the other hand, that unit was the one that all my token generation had been working on so far. Ryan, ever the bold spirit, takes it in stride, as he has a whole other half of the battlefield to work with. He marches Eldon up forward, hoping to start pushing me back on that front. We also realize that Oath of Duty triggers. Good thing he was able to get those out early, right? After the riders kill, I'm smelling blood in the water, and I activate my Starfall Knights next. They have an auto-in flank charge on Eldon's unit, and they take it. Of course, part of the reason I wanted to make this charge was the reckless strikes that was burning a hole in my pocket. All of the dice, all the keywords, multiple condition tokens is looking good for me. Two precision and 7 hits on Eldon, and with Sundering in the flank, he saves nothing. He passes the panic check and doesn't die right then and there. The successful panic check also lets him use Baratheon Conviction, which heals him up too. Just as I'm being nice and helping move models around, Ryan tells me he has the Baratheon middle finger, Final Strike, and that I have to make 9 saves. With the effects of Deadly Bloom and Reckless Strikes having already dealt me 3 wounds, this is really scary. Fortunately, some good rolls meant I only lost 1 more horse, so I took 6 wounds for dealing those 7. Start of Ryan's turn, he marks target my knights to give them a second condition token. Ryan then moves his pikemen into a position to block off a double team on Eldon, while also threatening my outriders. The end of the round has me moving said outriders into the flank of the Stag Knights, hoping to collapse on his army from one side. I do think I left my knights a little on their own, but the pikemen meant I couldn't get to them without some serious resource dedication. During the end of the round, I remove the 2 tokens my brave Starfall Knights put out, and Ryan removes the 2 tokens that were on the knights themselves, so we end this round 2-2. Round 2 was deceptively back and forth, and I have a large part of my army clustered on one half of the board. It's going to be a challenge to keep the pressure on Ryan. On the flip side, Ryan has my knights pinned down, and his stacking effects are really starting to take shape. At the start of round 3, Ryan and I flip over cards 4 and 6 respectively. I think this gives Ryan a good idea what I'm trying to do, and I think I know what Ryan does not want me doing. At the start of the turn, I Roinish Vengeance the Stag Knights because they looked like they needed more cards. I go to activate an NCU, and Ryan uses a Courtney token to tag the swords and letters. If I claim them, he heals. I decide to pass the turn, not claiming a zone, because a free VP and a heal was way too costly. Ryan marks my Starfall Knights again with Mark Target, activates Eldon, turns, and attacks me. He plays Hours of the Fury to pump his damage with Sundering. He also has his Perseverance and Valor go off, healing him 1, which deals 1 wound to me with the Deadly Bloom. Rerolls off of Battle Endurance meant that the attack put enough damage through to put my horses down, without even getting to the panic check. Big bummer, as I didn't get to use their activation this round. Hey, at least my runner's vengeance went off. Good thing I was able to play it. I'd try and stick to the plan, and run my horses into Ryan's deployment zone, threatening not only to sweep those injured Rose Knights, but I could also choose to attack the relatively squishy pikemen compared to the rest of his army. Speaking of pikemen, Ryan activates them and moves them towards the remainder of my army. In response, I pass with Varys. Ryan, not one to be outdone, passes back with Olenna. I activate the skirmishers and move them back, trying to move them around Obara while also not getting charged next round. Next, Ryan chooses to give me a point and takes horses with Marjorie. This is super impactful. Although I'm getting a VP, he can easily set up next round's charges and is putting me in a very tough spot. Ryan spins his Stag Knights around and puts them in very easy charge range of the Outriders I so graciously parked right in his deployment zone. Fortunately, I have Varys. Unfortunately, I think here is where I made a pretty bad play. I shift the Outriders over to increase the charge by about 1 inch. Hindsight's 20/20, but I should probably have moved Obara closer so that I could charge into the Stag Knights and tie them up. Ilaria, free from mission 4, activates. Ryan chooses the bags and letters with Courtney, so I claim swords, which lets me put a weakened token on the Stag Knights that are about to charge me. Ryan then takes bags with Courtney and removes the weakened token I was so proud of. I then move up the Lysine sellswords, realizing what could have been, but wasn't. It's time for the main event, and Ryan activates and declares the charge, making the 3 up with ease. Ryan starts tallying up his buffs, hands me a vulnerable off Oath of Duty, and ends up rolling 8 hits with Vicious. Even with the newly minted vulnerable, I still only take the 5 wounds. Honestly, it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be when he declared the charge. I do fail the panic check, but manage to use UUU and pass it, which throws the card on the Stags, which is the only unit in range. End of round 3, and Ryan is really starting to turn things around. It's 3-all, but he did a good job picking a side and holding it, while my units are scattered around. The early loss of his cavalry didn't slow him down, and now that we're both equally unhorsed, it's as I said in the game.
That was pretty sucky.
Round 4 reveals missions 9 and 12, controlling objectives and the revenge bounty. I'm a bit hopeful with the revenge, I know, but not a lot of other missions I drafted really fit the situation. Ryan starts by putting battle endurance on his pikemen. He then activates Olenna and takes his swords, to the surprise of no one. Arian is shut up, my UUU falls off, and he uses sustained assault when he attacks because he really wants my unit dead. Fortunately, I drew into a Dune Tactics to shave a few dice off the attack. Vulnerable out off Oath of Duty. Did I mention these guys are stacking some serious buffs? And I only take 6 hits. Vulnerable means I take all 6, and a failed panic check and no second unbattled by unbroken means I bite the dust there as well. It's a good start to the round for one player in particular. The Surge Fourth spins them around and puts them just out of Obara's charge range, and then it's back to me. I activate Varys and take the horses, trying to get my skirmishers back in the fight. How the heck did they get all the way over there? Marjorie activates and claims the letters. She heals Eldon's unit by 1, 2 cards are drawn, and a vulnerable token is put out on the skirmishers. The token doesn't last long, however, as Ilaria claims the bags and heals the skirmishers up to full, removing both tokens from the unit. Courtney goes and manages to take 3 wounds off Obara's unit with a crown zap. Obara, reading the room, backs up near the skirmishers as to try and be ready to countercharge next round if Ryan gets really aggressive. Eldon decides to turn and watch the carnage on the other side of the map from the safety of the point that he so valiantly defended. For my last activation, I activate the skirmishers, scouting the pikemen's openings and trying a long bomb charge on that unit to stop them from claiming the center objective. However, a 1 does not get me in, and it doesn't even stop Ryan from getting the center objective, because he could just automatically charge me. Ryan takes his sweet time and first moves his Stag Knights up close and personal with Obara's unit. I'm out of activations, so Ryan gets to go again. The charge is auto in, and after checking alignment, Ours is the Fury is played for a +1 to hit and vicious, with an incredibly juiced attack slamming into me. Battle Endurance, Battle Scars, Ours is the Fury, and Coordinated Assault is going to be brutal, and indeed, I take 10 sundering vicious hits over a corpse pile. It looks like I'll be adding to it soon. 9 out of 10 wounds for the damage, and break even on the panic check to not die instantly. This game is all but over for me. In a tournament setting, it will be about shrinking the margin of victory, so that's what I'm aiming to try and do here. Let's see if we can eke out a few more points, and maybe deny Ryan a couple. Round 5 has me playing the Mission 11 to give you an extra VP if you're behind, and Ryan picks the Bounty Mission 9, probably is to deny me scoring any more points. I start things off by getting while the going is good and activating Alaria to claim swords, which puts a panic token onto the pikeman, but that gets stag-witted right back onto me. However, when I make the attack, I sustained assault for highest attack die and a vulnerable token. The scout openings I totally mentioned before meant a lot of precision wounds, ranking the pikemen for better or worse. However, the pikemen are stalwart and don't fail their panic check. Olenna grabs the bags, prolonging my torture. She silences Aryan and heals the pikeman back up. I take Varys, and Ryan uses his last Courtney token to mark bags and horses. I see that any healing done at this point would be insignificant and claim the horses to retreat my skirmishers. He heals the pikemen to full and Eldon's unit up, not that they matter anymore. I roll the retreat dice, but honestly, I just feel like I'm wasting a little bit of time here. Quick Shot lands a few hits in the flank, and he fails all of them, but saves the panic again. Now it's time for the grand finale, as Ryan lines up a flank charge on Obara's unit with the incredibly beefed Loras Stags. He rolls a 1 for a disorderly charge, and although he still makes it in, Ryan doesn't get rerolls for this attack. It turns out he doesn't need them though, as he still manages to land 9 hits off of 7 dice. The auto hits from Stag's Fury and the crit blow came in huge. Unsurprisingly, Obara's unit eats it, and with 3 wounds left to my name, I decide to call the game. I think there were 1 or 2 key plays I could have made to give me a better chance, but one of the cool parts of doing this is being able to look back at your own games and say, what the heck was I thinking? It's important to pick a plan and stick to it. Some units kept getting caught tap dancing around and were no help when fighting started. This shouldn't take away from Ryan's win though. He created a solid offensive line and moved it up evenly, so outside of early riders, there was no good point of attack. The tactics board was locked down for most of the game, which greatly favored Baratheons, especially because they could further lock it down with their suite of NCUs. I always find the hidden mission game modes to be particularly challenging, and maybe a different set of missions being revealed could have changed the outcome of the game. I want to thank Ryan for taking the time to record this game. He was, and he always is, a great opponent. With that, I'll see you guys next time. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. You guys have all helped this channel grow so much in such a short amount of time, and we'd love to continue to grow even farther.